All right, we are just getting wind of an interview that MSNBC has just completed with Tim Cook, the Apple CEO. I guess this is going to air on April 6th. In the meantime, asked about privacy regulation, Tim Cook seemed to be open to the idea, calling for some type of privacy regulation, saying, and I quote here from this MSNBC interview, "We've never believed that these detailed profiles of people that have incredibly deep personal information that is patched together from several sources should exist." He said he is generally averse to regulation. However, quoting here, "I think we're beyond that. It is time for a set of people to think about what can be done." So this, of course, on the heels of the Facebook drama here, where even Mark Zuckerberg was hinting maybe some regulation should be in order. Here you have a big industry player saying he would be open to it as well. Whether Tim Cook was saying that to extend to companies like his own, it's a little bit different here, is anyone's guess. But I want to get the read from South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott. So much to discuss with him. And Senator, I don't want to hit you blindside with this, but it comes at a time when a lot of people are asking more of these technology guys, specifically in the case of Facebook, to tell folks what you're getting on them. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think Mark Zuckerberg's comments, he conceded the fact that Facebook must do better. And when that starts with an institution or with a company like Facebook that has so many pieces of our profile, of who we are, of our very sensitive information, if you take that and transpose it over the entire social media world, there's no question that he's coming before Congress. I would imagine that Tim Cook and others will voluntarily come before Congress and try to help create a roadmap going forward, because what we saw in the last couple of weeks, very disturbing information coming to the surface, and the reality of it is it could be much worse. So I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony and being a part of the process to make sure that we have guardrails that will be important to the privacy of each and every American citizen.
Do you think that we are going to be looking at more regulation on that industry? Because it comes at a time where this president, led by efforts like those like yourself and all, have been tearing regulations away, that this might be a case where we look at more regulations, at least for that sector.
Well, Tim Cook's comments suggest, at least infers, that there's going to be more information provided to the American people about what's actually transacting, what's happening there. So there will be a call for more regulations. There's no doubt for the last year and a half, though, we've been peeling back unnecessary regulations. The key, Neil, is responsible regulatory burden so as to protect the privacy, but to also allow the greatest growth engine, which has been the social media and the internet, to continue to function at the highest level possible, but at the safest level possible for our information. And we're all concerned about that. That's why I'm looking forward to, as opposed to drawing a conclusion, hearing the testimony from the CEO of Facebook as well as other media companies.
Let me ask you a little bit about something the president was kicking around when it came to this wall he wants to build. He was disappointed in the spending package at sheer size, but did complain about the size of the amount of money for building that wall, or continuing to build at $1.6 billion, that it should have been more. And he said maybe this is something the military should do. The military should fund it. How do you feel about that?
Well, certainly the $1.6 billion is not enough to build much of the wall that he anticipates getting done during his administration, during his time in office. I look forward to hearing from Secretary Mattis and our generals and their leadership. But here's one thing we could all rest upon. This is a reality, that our southern border, the walls are not there, they're not sufficient, and they are porous. Their porous borders means that more people came across our southern border who did not come from Mexico, but from other parts of the world through those porous southern borders. So addressing that issue as a national security issue makes some sense. Should it be done by the United States DOD, the Department of Defense budget? That's a whole and entirely different question, one we'll get to over the next couple of weeks. I know that we're looking forward to some announcements in the next couple of weeks as the president actually has more conversations with his leadership. The bottom line is he's the commander-in-chief. He's going to have a lot to say about what happens from a prioritization of our military resources. The good news is we're providing the military with $165 billion of additional resources over the next couple of cycles. The bad news is over the previous 8 years, we were so far behind that we actually now must make the necessary changes to include increasing the pay of the men and women in uniform, a 2.4% raise. It's not enough from my perspective. It's a good start in the right direction. So the funding of the wall, while we have more money than we've had before, we still have more priorities and, frankly, more bad actors around this globe.
But he might be the commander-in-chief, to your point, Senator, but he would not have the power to decide that military build this wall. I mean, that would have to be,
Absolutely.
I would assume, a measure ultimately approved by Congress, right?
Absolutely. That's why I said that the first thing that I look for is for him to continue the conversation with Secretary Mattis and the generals in the military.
But if he did this on his own, Senator, if he did this on his own and said, well, just build the damn thing and then just take it out of military funds, that would be a no-no.
Well, I don't think he can do that, number one. I think the congressional approval is necessary.
All right, real quickly, I know you've been working on opportunity zones, investment zones that would get special favorable tax treatment that would continue this economic improvement. Now, do you have targets in mind where this would be done, particularly tough areas, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, Neil, thank you for the question. The bottom line is on the opportunity zones, each governor of each state has an opportunity to designate areas that are distressed within their states using the new market tax credit definition for distressed communities, of which 52 million Americans live in those areas. We're looking for ways to bring private sector capital back in those neighborhoods without more government bureaucrats or more government programs. So the incentive is designed for states and localities to talk with their private sector community to make good things happen for people who are living on the edge.
But how does the government foster making good things happen? Private capital doesn't just willy-nilly go into a risk situation like that.
That's why this is Fox Business. So the truth is that you get a deferral of your capital gains tax. So if you'll make a long-term investment in one of the distressed communities, you get up to a 10-year deferral on that capital gains tax. And because of Obamacare and the increase in the capital gains tax, it's now 23.8%. So deferring that is a strong incentive for people to take a second look in distressed communities. But it's still going to be a business decision that business owners, developers, investors will have to make the decision whether or not the risk is worth it, even with a 23% opportunity to eliminate that part of your tax burden.
That's very interesting. A way to just keep the carrot out there and keep the companies diving in. We'll watch it closely. Senator, thank you very much. Good seeing you again.
Thank you, Neil.